Hi everybody. It's time for a John update, and I found it to be a really tricky one to write, and so I decided just to talk to you instead, and I'll just give you a link to this video. It's real personal and just seemed easier to speak to you, and I made myself some notes, so if I keep looking over it's because I'm trying to make sure I'm giving you all that I said I was going to give you. One of the things that's happened since his surgery is that I've been getting several very nice emails, and many of them say things like, "Oh my gosh, aren't you so glad this is over?" and "Geez, aren't you glad that's done?" And what I would say to that is that phase of this particular journey is definitely over, and yes, we are so glad. But I'm realizing that maybe some of you are not fully understanding what's happening here, because this isn't anywhere near over, and nor will it be until he's done. I will remind us that this is a very strange cancer, and it's incredibly ridiculously fast, and all of this is palliative, and everything that they did to buy him time. There's been some potential criticism of us for going through all the things we did because it was pretty brutal. But the truth is, had we not done that, he would not be alive now. No drama, just fact. So it had to be done if he wanted to live. And now phase B is this maintenance, and it's actually really quite difficult. So that's going to be my update. Yes, he's still in remission. People are like, "That's great. You know, I have a friend who was diagnosed and had 6 months to live, and they lived for 35 years." And I know that's true for a lot of people. That is not going to be the case here. This is not us naysaying or being negative. The reality is that he has to live on chemo every day for the rest of his life. Once he stops that, it will come back. It's that kind of a cancer. And once it starts, it's going to go like wildfire, and they won't have anything else to do, and that will be the end for him. So this daily requirement of chemo is part of what he's agreed to do for now. And I guess my report here is to say that inside of that type of living, he has had a decline in quality of life, a quite large one, and it's getting harder. It's not the kind of thing where he's ready to stop the chemo yet, but I think more decline. At some point he's going to want to stop because it's just not a way to live. But for today, he's working pretty hard in his courageous way to keep on trucking, and it kind of sucks. So I would say the report is kind of good because he's way better than he was after surgery. And given what he was up against, he's better than that. But as far as all the results of all this surgery and medicine and cancer and da-da-da, his daily living is extremely difficult. Okay, so things like he tells me he was down at the river the other day and he got really dizzy and was worried he was going to pass out. He didn't. But he played through this scenario in his head, and he said, you know, if I had had some sort of episode down there and died, I would have been okay with that. He hasn't really talked like that before, so that tells us a lot. And he also has this weirdo way of getting his brain around hard things. Sometimes it takes him a little while, but he's been actually pretty miraculous through all of this. And he has now admitted that it's going faster than his brain can catch up, and so he's getting pretty depressed. So I am going to tell you a bunch of details about his life and what's going on purpose. Some people have asked me why I do that, and partly it's because there's a couple hundred people on this list, and some of them are a real close-in circle, and some of them are the outer circle, but different people, friends, family have different needs and different questions, and I'm trying to answer all of you at once. And some of you have asked, and also John and I talked about it, and we have about 5 reasons that we have shared together why this is important to us, that we share this not terribly often, but somehow it's helpful for you to know where he's at for a variety of reasons in our mind. So thank you for listening, and if that all becomes too much for you, just please take yourself off my list. And I need you to know that while this is pretty private stuff, I do have his absolute permission to share this with you, which I thought was also kind of interesting too, because he's been kind of silent, but now he wants people to know. So, I don't know. So here's my list of things that's going on in his body. I think one of the biggest ones is he has terrific traveling bone pain. He is on 4 milligrams, I think, or 5, of Dilaudid every 4 hours. And he is on a 3-day time-released fentanyl patch. That is quite a bit of pain medicine, as well as acetaminophen. And even with all that on board, his pain is ridiculous. I mean, even sometimes he'll go, oh, and he'll just sit there and he'll say, my ear bones hurt now. Or, oh, now it's in my pinky. Or, oh, geez, it's in my hip. And he has to pretty much just stand still and wait for it to move through, and some days it just stays stuck in those spots. The second most difficult thing, I think, for him is this numbness. So when the chemo started, I don't know, a year and a half ago or whatever it was, he was probably numb to about here in his fingers and his toes, and now the numbness has climbed up to about here. And numbness kind of aches if you have ever had numb limbs, and it is terribly uncomfortable, and it's actually debilitating his hands in particular. So now he has to deal with the psychology of loss, because he is not fishing well. He's still doing it, but he is not able to tie those knots and control that pole, and you know, he is like the fisherman of the earth, and it's his #1 favorite thing to do, and now he can barely do it. He's still trying, but that's heartbreaking. And he said the other day, I can no longer butcher. And that's his second favorite thing to do. And he was devastated by that. I actually think he had it in his mind that next Christmas he was going to go to Denver and butcher for Dennis at Wally's like he usually does. And he said there's absolutely no way that he could possibly do that, and that he's just not even safe because he can't really feel his hands. So he can like butcher meat for a meal or something, but his knife work is pretty much gone. So that's pretty dang sad. Normally he's 200 to 210 pounds, and now he's 166 and pretty much is not gaining weight. You know, sometimes we go and he's 166.8, but he's a stick. He's lost his muscle tone. He's ashamed of his body. You know, this is a guy who's so proud of his body, and it's very tragic. And it's partly because he can't eat. His mouth hurts, his teeth hurt, his throat hurts and gets choky. So he hardly eats. I need to actually make a huge investment in Ensure, because we're out, and that's at least a way to get some nourishment into him. He's trying to eat 1 chunky meal a day. I'm trying to cook things that he adores, which helps, and he chugs it down, but everything has to be squishy soft and not very warm and not very cold, and eating was one of his favorite joys, and it is a trial now. He has terrifically mixed up sleep patterns. He just doesn't sleep well. He's not really getting full rest, and then he'll sleep for days. So that's very difficult. And of course, he's still healing surgically from all that gutting. I mean, they opened him up from sternum to groin twice inside of 7 days, and you know, of course, removed his bladder and removed his prostate, and had to connect up the urostomy so that he could pee out of a bag on the side of his body. I mean, these were horrific surgeries. You've read all that, you know all that, and he's still healing from that, and a lot of little electrical pains and sharp pains. And then here's kind of a tricky one. They tell you very little about what's going to happen to you when they remove your bladder, but it is intense. So, all right, this is kind of hard to talk about. your penis dies. They don't tell you that when they're going to take your bladder out. They tell you it's not going to work anymore, but it actually dies, and it is totally painful. You men will appreciate this. He says he feels like he is being racked all the time. All the time. And then on top of that, he'll get these stabbing pains like somebody's taken a knife to him. And we did go to the doctor about it, and he said that that's normal, that it's dying, that the urethra is shriveling and closing and shrinking. And the penis itself is shrinking into nothingness and receding into his body. And his balls are shrinking back up. So it's just, if you can imagine the ramifications beyond the pain of that, but the male psychology of losing your manhood in that way, especially John, John, Mr. Proud Penis guy, and oh Lord, I said, well, at least you had that life before, but, and of course, there's absolutely no sex in no way going to happen. It can't. There's nothing, not in those ways, and, which is, by the way, fine in this household, but there's a lot of grief and the psychology of like not being a man enough, and he has such big issues to deal with. It's like you lose the things you love, you lose parts of your body, they took parts of your body out, you deal with the fact that you're dying, on and on and on. Okay, so there's that part. He's dealing with the ostomy itself. Basically, they pull a piece of your intestine. They make a hole in your side, and they pull a piece of your intestine out. It sticks out of your body like this. It's bright red. It's called a stoma, and that's where the pee comes out, so you have to wear this little bag. We did this before when he had an ostomy, before. I didn't say that well, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, the stoma hurts, so he gets these stabbing pains in the stoma, and he gets these kidney infections, and he's got the psychology of having this accessory hanging off of his body and having these hoses coming off of that for the urine to come out of, and having to have like dispatch bags and hide those and don't let people see them. And what kind of bag do I need today? Is it the one that straps to my leg, or is it the big one that holds a lot of volume? And how do I sleep? If I roll over, it breaks, and then it's all over the bed, and we have to get up in the middle of the night. And I mean, that alone is a huge thing. He can't seem to regulate his temperatures. He has to stay also on, this kind of cracks me up, estrogen. He's on time-released estrogen, and so he gets these incredibly crazy hot flashes. He says he now empathizes with every menopausal woman. And so he gets these crazy hot flashes, and then they leave as soon as they, as when they're done, and then he's laying there shivering and his teeth are chattering. So he has a very difficult time regulating his temperature and his moods. All of this is just too much for one human being, in my opinion, clearly. And so he is quick to anger and offensive, and sometimes he'll come back and apologize. He does to me, at least, and he's a roller coaster. He's on mood meds, so we try to make sure he stays on those. But his mood's getting harder to control, and that's that piece where he says he can't get his brain ahead of this. And his lower back is in constant pain, even with all those pain meds, because he had all that cancer in his bones in his sacrum, and it's deteriorated his spine. And so with that, he can't ever lift more than 15 pounds. And that is a big psychological problem, too, because this man knew his body better than anybody I've ever met, and loved his body and was in control of his body, and now he cannot use his body. I mean, he used to work like 4 guys, and now he's trying to still, and wipes himself out when he does, but he can't lift. If he crushes his lower spine and breaks it, then they will have to morphine him to death, because there's no way to repair that, and you cannot live that way. So he must not lift heavy things, and that's really depressing. He told me the other day he actually hates his body now. That was really sad, actually. I mean, you all know him, and he talked about himself his whole 50 years, and I mean, there was no doubt John loved his body, and for him to say that now, Yeah, that's noteworthy. Okay, so, trying not to be weepy, he has to medicate every 4 hours. That includes having to wake up in the middle of the night and try to stay ahead of it all, so we do that every night. And on top of it all, now they've told him that he has arthritis too. And so, because he didn't have quite enough pain before, the universe has given him pain in his neck and his shoulders and his elbows and his knees. So that's really nifty. And so every night now we're doing massage and tapotement, try to get blood circulation and make him feel a little bit better. And his breathing is challenged now on top of it. He is doing inhalers every day, and at night, on top of all this other care, I rub his chest with Vicks, which seems to help him some. He has onset of nausea all the time. He is still coping with high blood pressure. The pills that he takes are insane. I'm so grateful that we have the medical care that we do, and we're getting the prescriptions for free, because he's taking like 38 pills a day. And it seems to me that some of them are counterintuitive to other ones, and I don't know. I don't know. Enough pills to choke a horse. He's also taking pre and probiotics, which I'm really grateful for. And I'm really proud of him. He did have when I was helping Willow, I don't know if many of you know this, but my dear friend had a heart attack, and I went for about 2 months between the hospital and her house and stayed with her and helped her through that. And while I was away, because John was okay enough, he had a huge drinking bout. I think that's when the cat's away, the mouse will play thing, which I hear wasn't fun around here. And then he stopped that. I think he needed one last push for himself, and he said it didn't even make him happy, and it's not good. Chemo apparently is undone by drinking, so he can't really drink. He has not much anyway. They told him he could have a beer or so a day, a couple beers a day maybe, and that's what he's doing. So I'm really proud of him for that. You know, the truth is, that's a piece of psychology that he has to deal with too, because you know him, he loved to drink. And so, like, basically it's asking him to be this entirely different human being, but it's not really giving him a pleasant choice of alternatives. It's just taking away all the stuff that he loves. Yeah, I wrote down here, he's lost so much. He even apologized to me the other day for marrying me. Apparently, we figured out he had cancer when we got married, but we didn't know. And he said, oh, had he known that at the time, he would have never agreed to marry me, because he would never have put this on me. So his head is very sad. I will tell you that we do an immense amount of talking, and we're incredibly good at talking together when he's with me. When he's not with me, we don't do very well at all, but that fighting thing, I'm trying to walk away. But when he's with me, oh my gosh, we have very important conversations about our relationship and service and the rightness of things and the joy that we have, even in light of all of this suck. So yeah, when he told me that, we talked about that at length, and it was a very emotional time, because I told him that I would rather have him like this, where I can touch him and still be able to hold his hand and talk to him, rather than not have him at all. So he goes, oh, I didn't even think of that. Of course he didn't. So what else? I think the summary is not so good in the body, not so good in the head, always tired and fatigued, and it makes it challenging around here, because we do live in a community, and he's tricky. And I think there's some kind of dynamic about people getting used to him having cancer, because in some ways he doesn't tell people this stuff for the most part, and he tries to act normal, and so it's almost like we forget, sort of, if that I don't, because I get it all, but it's like the support went away, and I feel like in some cases the compassion went away, and I think in some ways he brought that on himself, because he's not deep sharing, and he's lashing out at people when he's hurting, and so it's very complicated. Yeah. And today he's in Seattle with Colette and her family watching the Super Bowl. He's very excited about that. I'll tell you, when he does find something that he enjoys, he goes at it 110% still, and I'm really happy about that. And I'm very happy spring is coming because with nicer weather, and I mean, every night he walks and he works with this pond, and he stands down and talks to the river, and you know, he loves this place, and I think and he put daffodil bulbs all over our yard, so we should be having a lot of those, and so he's really trying hard to find his joy. And that's what I know. Thanks for listening. If you hated this and you don't want this kind of a report again, please just take me off your list. I won't be offended. See why I didn't know how to write all that down? Appreciate all your prayers. Keep them going. It's a bittersweet thing. You know, like, all in all, we're doing okay, and it's very, very hard. So prayers to everybody who's dealing with challenges like this, I'll tell you. I don't know. Woo! Have a good day.